Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the Dell U3824DW. If at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's jump into it. All right, firstly, this is a 38-inch screen, or more specifically, a 37.5-inch screen. This has a resolution of 3840 by 1600 and has a slight curve. If you're worried about the curve in terms of like it bending maybe things on the display, if you're doing Photoshop and other things like that, this is so slight of a curve and it's more uniform, so it's not really that big of a deal. I edit on a curved ultrawide all day long for years at this point, and I love it. Now, this resolution is higher due to the 38-inch screen size than your standard 3440 by 1440p, so this is a higher resolution here, but you do also have more screen size. Now, the PPI translates to about what a 1440p 27-inch monitor would be, or a standard 3440 by 1440p 34-inch ultrawide. So basically, it keeps the same PPI, or pixels per inch, how crisp and clear the display is actually going to appear to your eye. So this is at 110, whereas a 1440p 27-inch monitor is about 109. So pretty much the same there. This means text is going to be crisp and clear, but not quite as absolutely perfect as a 4K resolution. Still very good for editing and professional video work. Now, as for the panel type, this is an IPS black panel, which means you have great viewing angles, no risk of burn-in, great colors, and with that black technology, you get that deeper contrast ratio of 2000:1 instead of your standard 1000:1 for most IPS panels. Now, this does make a noticeable difference with editing photos, video, watching movies, and playing games. The blacks are noticeably deeper and darker, but it's not going to be as noticeable as like going from a regular IPS to a VA panel. So definitely a noticeable difference, but I would say probably about a 30% upgrade from your standard IPS panel. Now let's talk ports, because that's a big deal with this monitor. Firstly, you have two HDMI 2.0s, one DisplayPort 1.4, one display USB Type-C with 90 watts of charging, a USB Type-C upstream, then two USB Type-C downstreams. And those two USB Type-C downstreams are actually on the bottom chin, so right under the monitor in a very accessible location. Really like that. You then also get four USB Type-A's in the rear with all the rest of the ports, and one more in the bottom chin on the left. So in total, you have 5 USB Type-A's. Then you get a 3.5mm audio out, and lastly, an Ethernet port, which is very cool to have. Overall, tons of ports to choose from. You're not gonna run out of ports, everything you need, plus those chin-mounted ports are fantastic. All right, but let's move on to brightness. Most standard monitors, especially for color-accurate work, are only gonna be around maybe 250 to 300 nits of brightness. Now this is rated at 300 nits of brightness. When you get this, it will be in the standard color profile, and in that color profile, you're only gonna get about 266 nits of brightness. That's what I tested. However, when testing in the different color profiles, the brightness did change, and that's without changing the contrast. So we're not just amping up the monitor. This is just how it comes from the factory with that contrast set at 75, which is kind of where it should be. So in the movie setting, it stays about the same at 263 nits. In the game setting, it gets significantly brighter at 357 nits. And in the custom color with no adjustments made, this brings it all the way up to 380 nits of brightness. That's a fantastic brightness, especially when considering that most monitors like this are really only topping out at maybe 300, 330 nits of brightness. Hitting almost 400 nits of brightness is great. Now you might be asking, okay, well, what's the brightness in HDR that says no HDR compatibility? It does not work. It's just not something that you can do. It is kind of strange that with a monitor this expensive, you don't have it, but to be completely fair, it wouldn't have been great anyway due to not having just a bright enough panel. That backlight would just need to be a whole lot brighter to make it a really good experience. All right, now before we move on to colors, let's talk about the matte finish. If you're unaware, matte finishes, while they may be nice to keep away reflections, direct reflections, they do decrease picture quality. They decrease clarity, contrast, a lot of things. So while I would have preferred this to be a glossy screen, this is a very thin matte coating. So if you're doing photo and video editing, this is really, really good for that. Still, a glossy panel would have been better, but this is very thin, so you don't get a lot of that dirty screen effect, so that is good. Now, colors here are absolutely amazing. That's one of the biggest parts of this monitor. This covers 100% of the sRGB color gamut, 100% of the Rec 709, and 98% of the DCI-P3 color gamut. Now, not just the gamut is wide, but the accuracy is pretty frickin' bang on. I was pretty dang impressed, as it should be for an ultra-fine monitor like this. But out of the box, in the standard color profile, it was absolutely fantastic. Like, you just take this out of the box, you can immediately go into doing professional photo and video editing that's color accurate out of the box with no calibration tool. Now, the movie and game profiles without adjustment are not as accurate as standard, but if you want the extra brightness that the standard color profile doesn't give you, custom color was also very, very accurate without any adjustments. Really, the only thing I did was bring the blues down 1% in the gain adjustments. And this is really what I recommend for the best visual and accuracy experience, to get all of the accuracy of the colors and get that brightness without adjusting too many things. Also, this can also output 10 bits of color, which is fantastic and what we want for professional video editing or really anything. All right, let's move on to a quality control issue, and this is backlight bleed. There is not a massive amount of backlight bleed here, but there is small amounts in each of the corners. Now, this isn't a massive deal, but still, on a monitor that's over $1,000, you don't really want to see backlight bleed. Personally, I would still buy this and probably just send it back if I did get backlight bleed, so you might want to check that, get a black screen up there, be in a dark room, and just check for the bleed. If it does have it, maybe ask them for a replacement. I'm not sure how common this is, as this is a quality control issue, but yes, definitely check for backlight bleed and decide if it's bad enough or not bad enough, whether you want to send it back and get a replacement. All right, now we're going to talk about a little bit of gaming performance here. If you're not interested in this, there's timestamps below. All right, so firstly, let's talk about ghosting. This is a 60 hertz monitor, so ghosting just inherently is never going to be amazing, just because the panel can't refresh fast enough for it to be like crystal clear. But for being a 60 hertz panel, it's actually very, very good. Now, there's two different response time settings. There's normal and fast. In fast, there was a ridiculous amount of pixel overshoot, so never set it in that, basically under any circumstances. It's not gonna do anything. However, input lag for a 60 hertz non-gaming display is impressive. Playing Forza was really, really enjoyable. Now, when hopping into an FPS game, it definitely is more noticeable, but this is mainly due to this just being a 60 hertz display. If you're the type of person who wants to hop in game just casually and have some fun every now and then, maybe once a week, maybe even a little bit more, this is totally a competent display to do that. If you play slower games like GTA or Red Dead Redemption, anything like that, this is gonna do great with. One other thing to mention is that screen tearing really wasn't an issue here at all, which is pretty surprising, but yeah, there was not really any big noticeable screen tearing, even when doing really, really fast whips, so that's pretty impressive. So as far as gaming, this is not a gaming centered display, but it definitely can game. All right, now let's talk menu system and controls. This is pretty classic Dell. For the controls, this has a dedicated power button and a joystick on the right rear side. And that's pretty much it. That's all the controls you get, which is a good thing. It's simple. There's tons of settings to customize. It's pretty easy to find everything. It's not super modern or having attractive graphics, but it does work well. There's tons of settings for the KVM switch, which allows you to use keyboard, mouse, and camera that can be plugged into the monitor itself, which then allows you to be able to switch between computers or inputs, but still maintain those same peripherals, which is fantastic for multitasking, or if this is your main work monitor, that's where this just absolutely shines. Beyond that, there's so many different ways to customize basically everything about this monitor. You can also do picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture, so you can have two inputs on the same display. And this can either be adjusted with the menu system on screen itself, or you can actually download Dell's software and change all the settings and everything else that way if you'd rather use your mouse than use the joystick. That's also, again, really, really cool. Now, these are just a very few amount of things that you can customize inside of this monitor. It's pretty mind-blowing how many things you can customize. This also has quick wait, which keeps it in more of a booted up state, so if the screen goes to sleep, it will quickly come back on. Now, obviously this takes more power, but there's just a bunch of little things like that that just make this a fantastic monitor to customize personally to you. That's one of the reasons I absolutely love a lot of these ultrafine monitors, because they have a lot of those features in them. This is great. Now, if you do want to mount this and not use the stand, this uses a 100mm by 100mm Vesa mount. And while this is a little bit heavier for sure because it is a larger monitor, it's still fairly easy to get a monitor arm or something like that under $100 that will support this. Now, let's talk about the internal speakers. They are pretty dang decent. Now, for monitor speakers, these are fantastic. For normal speakers, they're decent. They get reasonably loud. They never distort even when maxed out. They have a small amount of bass, but they are very, very clear. For daily tasks like hopping on Zoom meetings, playing games, watching YouTube, these are super, super sufficient. And honestly, if you're a headphone guy or girl, you can just use the monitor speakers itself and then mainly use your headset, and that's just gonna work great. Now, stand and build quality is really good here, as you'd expect. There's a lot of metal in the build quality that's then covered with that silver plastic. It looks great, it feels high quality, and all the movements work well. This has height, tilt, a ton of swivel, and it has a little bit of rotation just to level it. Overall, no problems with the build quality. It feels well built, it's well put together, and it looks like a very premium monitor. All right, now price and value, and should you buy this monitor? Well, if you're the type of person who wants the color accuracy, wants a very large ultra-wide monitor that has a slight curve, this is an amazing monitor. I absolutely love this monitor, and I'm actually considering getting one for my personal editing desk just to be able to edit on this every day. It's super color accurate from the factory, and the price isn't unreasonable. The MSRP is, I think, around $1,500, maybe slightly more, but currently I think it's about $1,100 to $1,200. For that price, this is a steal. You're getting unbelievable color accuracy, really wide color gamut, and a huge screen that actually gets very bright, brighter than you would expect. If you're the person that wants all of those things, this is a fantastic monitor. Dell absolutely killed it. But again, if you want to check it out, there are Amazon links below, as well as a Dell.com link below if you prefer to get it that way. And if you want to check out the unboxing and first impressions so you know what comes in the box, you can check that video out right there. But this is Type C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.